Hello, this is a face sculpting video. Thank you NimuVT for allowing me to share this. She is the face that I am sculpting. So initially I'm just going off of the image on the right. I use a multi-resolution modifier on a kind of smoothed out cube that's been smushed into a oblong oval head shape thing. And I just kind of smudge things in the right direction. I use elastic deform because it is very, very nice. It very smoothly deforms things way better than grab. I've also put a plane in the scene with the reference image on it, and from the front I'm just matching up the features, so like the chin and the cheeks and whatnot. When you're trying to make something look exactly like a reference, doing things this way is probably best. There are some faces that don't really work in 3D, but you can at least try to get it started this way, and then make any necessary adjustments later on. I also like to set my view length, like my view camera length, to like 80 or 100, because the default 50mm for the like view camera, it kind of warps things a little bit too much in perspective. And usually for like face close-ups and stuff, they use I think it's a smaller angle, actually. Like, it's a smaller field of view, so like there's less perspective distortion. Like, you know, in games when you play and you have like a really big field of view, like the things at the edges are really like stretched out. We don't like that, so small field of view so things aren't stretched out. Which in our case is a longer focal length. Details like the jaw and stuff aren't going to be visible from most references. Especially if they're straight on, because the jaw kind of curves around back after the cheek. So that's something that you'll have to like get a feel for and do independently of your reference. And real quick, I'm just going to make sure that I have screencast keys on, so from now on you'll be able to see what buttons I'm pressing. I use the crease tool to mark out the facial features. I make sure that size is being affected by my tablet pressure, because otherwise it can be kind of annoying to control the brush. So I just mark out like the eyes. Just marking them out is fine, but it's a little easier to sculpt them if there's a little bit more of an indentation, so I just clear out the center parts so it's a little bit more of a an inset. I mark out the eyelids. So yeah, basically all of the important like facial features. And I try to pretty them up a little bit. We're not gonna worry about depth yet. So like, this is gonna look like shit from the side. We don't care about that. We just care about matching the front. The mouth should be closed. You can sculpt it open, but that's kind of annoying. I like to sculpt it closed, unless they have really detailed lips. If they have really detailed lips, then sculpting it open can be better. But for anime lips, sculpting closed is fine. So from the side, it looks kind of like shit. But that's okay, because we're gonna lock the X and Z axes, and then it only moves front and back. So now we know it matches from the front. So now all we have to do is we have to make it look good from the sides. But we can only move it front and back because the front already matches, and we don't want to mess up the likeness to the reference. So I tend to just pull the nose bridge and the inner eye tear duct. I pull that back. I'll push out the nose and the lips. And yeah. All I have to do is worry about pushing it back and forth now. I don't have to worry about moving it around because it matches from the front. Some shapes are a little bit impossible to make from just doing it this way. Like, if your nose turns up more, if the tip of your nose is higher than the bridge, which can happen with anime noses, you'll want to unlock the z-axis so that you can push it down, but then you'll have to go to the front again and make sure that it matches the reference so that the tip is in the right place. You can use other sculpting tools too. You don't only have to use grab or elastic deform. So I was just using draw, but I still have everything locked on the X and Z axis, so it only moves front and back. The 3/4 view, it's important to think about the cheeks and the outer eye corner. Because anime eyes are really big, it can either result in the face being flat, so that you can have your flat anime eye big enough, and then the corner is almost flush with the inner corner. I don't really like that kind of look for 3D anime. It's just my personal taste, so I still have the eye corner fold around the side of the head. I like to have a smooth transition into the cheek as well from the eye. You can use mask to keep parts of the sculpt the same and then change other parts of the sculpt. So here I only want to change the eyes, but I don't want to change the rest of the sculpt, and using grab will usually move those parts. Because I want to grab a larger portion of the eye, but that usually grabs a larger portion of the cheek as well. So using mask will prevent it from spilling over and moving parts that I do not want to move. I'm just cleaning up the eyelid creases. Doing this can help give a better impression of what the eyes will look like in final. I like to pay a lot of attention to eyes. I'm particularly obsessed with them. I enjoy making them quite a bit. Detailing them is fun. I'm adding more definition to the lips as well, because they were looking kind of shriveled or non-existent. The mouth is not simply a hole in the face, it has lips around it that should protrude a little bit, so that from the side it actually looks like there are some lips. Sometimes copying a reference directly can lead to some weird forms. So, like the mouth on this model ended up being way too high. It was like 2 inches away from the chin and half an inch away from the nose, which, yeah, it just looked off. So I moved it down a little bit. Just to kind of make it feel a little bit better. I'm also pulling the mouth corners in a little bit more, because they were kind of a little bit too far out. On a normal face, like if you feel your face, which I am doing right now, your mouth corners probably go in a little bit. They don't have to go in a lot, but they go in more on an anime face, because when you look at an anime face from the side, a lot of the features are more visible than they would be in real life. And because an anime face is wide, but the mouth is still visible, the corners need to come back a little bit more than they would from like a real face. So we're just exaggerating that. So I'm missing the clip, but I have thrown in the new eyes. So we have the eye spheres in there now, and I will adjust the facial features to look good around them. We don't want the eyes to stick out too much from the face, and we want to give the eyelids a fair bit of thickness, so that when we make our blend shapes, they don't ever clip through the eyes. Something common that can happen is if your eyes stick out too much and you try to make a blink blend shape, halfway through the blink, the eyelid will be going through the eye, because blend shapes don't curve around the eye like it might with an actual control rig. So we need enough like distance on the top eyelid so that when it goes straight into the blinking position, it won't clip through the eye. So giving enough eyelid thickness as well as pushing the eyes more into the face so they don't stick out so much are valid solutions for that issue. I realized I must have turned mirror off or moved the mesh at some point, because the eyes are not symmetrical, so I'm just going into the right side there and making it match the left side. With the eyes and the face, I'm going through and just defining the eyelids again, making sure that I like the shape, and making sure that they fit around the eyes nicely and that the overall shapes are working. After checking all the angles, I'm pretty happy with how it looks, so at this point it's ready to retopologize. I'm saving a million times because I don't want it to crash and burn. To start the retopology process, I create a plane, and I'll just put it near the face because that's where we're going to be retopologizing stuff. There are some options we need to set up before we start though. We want to turn on snap to face. We want to turn on rotate and scale. We want to create a mirror modifier, turn on clipping so that it stays in the middle and we don't get any gaps in the middle. We want to turn on project or we want to make sure that project individual elements is on in the snapping settings, otherwise it won't snap to the surface. So we're pretty much ready to start now, except for we need to also add a subsurf modifier and a shrink wrap modifier. Shrink wrap modifier needs to be in project mode, positive and negative. The offset should be like 0.002 or 3, and we want to make sure that it's on the outside surface or above surface, because otherwise the vertices can snap to the inside rather than the outside of the projection mesh that we're using. So they might end up inside the head if we don't use those two settings. Control clicking will let you extrude any vertices that you have selected, so that's how I created the eye loops there. I start with the eyes and the mouth usually to get those guys placed. Everything else will be placed around where those loops end up because they are the most important loops. Because the mouth will be deforming a lot and the eyes will be deforming a lot. Everything else kind of it matters a little bit less, even if it's still important. I decided to go in and refine the sculpt a little bit around the mouth just so it's a little bit smoother for the retopology process. In this case, I did the nose first and then the mouth. But I'm still not filling in like the cheeks and other areas before getting the mouth and eyes done. Um, in this case, it kind of helps that I did the nose first because it makes sure that I don't create too dense topology around the mouth. I also want to make sure that the top and bottom of the mouth have a similar number of vertices. It doesn't have to be exact, but if it's similar, it'll make it easier to deform it later for the blend shapes. If you have like a lot of vertices on one side and not enough on the other side, you can end up with the situation where like the bottom lip deforms very smoothly, but the top one doesn't. So just keeping it similar, even if it's not the exact same, is helpful. The mouth topology at the edges, so it's basically an extruded edge loop from the mouth that kind of forms a semicircle with the nose. The reason for this is it allows us to create cheek topology that creates a smooth curve. Because depending on the angle of your quads, you can end up with volume loss, because eventually this all turns into triangles when we put it into like a game engine or whatever. Even in Blender, it is technically triangles, it just automatically does it, because quads are easier to work with. But depending on the angle that your quads create a shape, you can end up with kind of missing chunks where it turns like a triangle, where it turns the quad into a triangle in a way that's not very good. So you want to keep the quads as flat as possible along curves that you want to be smooth. So we want the quads to follow the curve of the cheek instead of like going straight down from the eye. So they kind of come and they curve in so that we get a nice profile when looking at the face from other angles. For my purposes, I don't really have to care about how the forehead looks. I don't really have to care about the topology there. As long as it's a similar density to the rest of the face, it'll deform how I want it to. So even if some of these loops are technically incorrect, it doesn't matter here. If I were creating this for like an animation rig, I would probably care a lot more about having it perfect. But in this case, it doesn't really matter. There's going to be essentially no commentary for the next 5 minutes, so enjoy the modeling process of extrusion and filling in space, I suppose. I don't have any more recordings for the inside of the mouth or for finishing off the eyes, so this is just kind of a base to work from, I suppose. The mouth is pretty easy. You just extrude it in and make it into like a bag. For the eyes, it's similar. All the edge loops here are the important part. And yeah, that's that. Thanks for watching, I suppose, and have a good one. I wish you luck if you try this method. Bye-bye.